Emily Harper stood at the edge of the beautiful balcony of her penthouse apartment, the city lights reflecting in her thoughtful eyes. The world saw her as a successful and accomplished businesswoman, a self-made billionaire who had turned Harper Enterprises into a global empire. But beneath the confident exterior was a woman deeply skeptical of human intentions. For years, Emily had watched people flock to her for what she could offer, not who she truly was. When William Henry came into her life, she thought she had found something real, a charming accountant from a middle-class background. William had seemed uninterested in her wealth and more drawn to her kind heart and simple joys. They met at a charity event where Emily had pretended to be one of the organizers rather than the primary benefactor. He had spoken to her like an equal, his warm smile disarming her guarded heart. Now, 2 years into their marriage, Emily was questioning everything. She had chosen to live modestly, hiding her fortune from William and his family to test their loyalty. What she had found was disheartening. Emily walked into the small, modest kitchen of the house she had purchased after their wedding. The house wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a creaky wooden floor, and an old stove that always seemed on the verge of breaking. It was a far cry from her luxurious penthouse, but she had wanted to see how William would treat her without the glitz and glamour. "Emily, the grocery list," William called from the living room. "Mom said we're out of everything for the dinner tonight." She sighed and grabbed her coat. William's family, particularly his mother Grace, had a habit of inviting themselves over for meals, expecting Emily to cook and entertain. Grace always found subtle ways to criticize her cooking, her clothes, even her frugality. "Coming," Emily replied, hiding her irritation. She passed William, who was sprawled on the couch scrolling through his phone. "I'll be back soon. Make sure you don't forget the wine," he added without looking up. By the time Emily returned, the Donovan household had already made itself comfortable in her living room. Grace sat on the couch, her sharp eyes scanning the modest decor with disdain. Claire was busy flipping through a magazine, her designer purse bought with William's money carelessly tossed on the floor. Darren was in the corner, fiddling with a gaming console Emily had bought to appease him during his last visit. Finally, Grace spoke as Emily walked in with the groceries. "We were beginning to think you got lost." "Sorry, the line at the store was long," Emily said calmly, though her patience was wearing thin. She placed the bags on the counter and began unpacking. Grace stood and walked into the kitchen, scrutinizing the contents. "You didn't get the brand I like," she said, holding up a jar of tomato sauce. Emily forced a smile. "This one's just as good." Grace snorted. "Well, I suppose we can make do. But really, William, can't you do better? I don't know why you insist on living like this when you could have married someone who—" "Mom, that's enough," William interrupted, though his tone lacked conviction. Emily's chest tightened. The unspoken truth in Grace's words hung heavy in the air. Emily finished unpacking the groceries in silence, letting Grace's thinly veiled insults wash over her. It wasn't the first time her mother-in-law had implied William could have done better, and Emily knew it wouldn't be the last. Dinner was a tense affair. Emily had cooked a hearty meal, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a fresh salad, but Grace barely touched her plate, preferring to pick at it while making pointed comments about the house's outdated decor. "This house could use a woman's touch," Grace said, her fork stabbing at a piece of chicken. "William, you should think about hiring someone to help Emily. She clearly needs guidance." Emily's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Thank you for the suggestion, Grace. I'll keep that in mind." Claire smirked, adding, "Or maybe you could get a better paying job, Emily. Then you wouldn't have to rely on William so much." The remark stung more than Emily cared to admit. She glanced at William, hoping he would defend her, but he avoided her gaze and focused on his plate. "Actually, I've been thinking about taking on a second job," Emily lied smoothly, masking her hurt. "It might help us save up for some improvements around here." Grace laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "You'd need a lot more than a second job to make this place decent." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and excused herself to the kitchen, her hands trembling as she began washing the dishes. She had never felt so belittled in her own home, and the man she had married, the one she had thought loved her unconditionally, sat silent, unwilling to stand up for her. Later that night, as Emily lay awake in bed, her mind raced with doubts. William's family had always been overbearing, but their disdain for her had become increasingly blatant. The worst part was William's indifference. She had hoped that living modestly would bring them closer, but it had only revealed cracks in their relationship. The next morning, Emily decided to test the waters further. "William," she said over breakfast, her voice steady. "I was thinking we could start saving for a vacation, maybe a small trip to the countryside." William frowned. "A vacation? Now's not the time for that. Besides, I need to focus on helping Darren with his business idea. He's planning to open a gaming cafe, and he'll need a loan to get started." Emily stared at him, incredulous. "William, we can barely make ends meet as it is." He shrugged. "Darren has potential. He just needs someone to believe in him. Besides, it's family. You wouldn't understand." Her heart sank at his words. "I thought I was family, too." William didn't reply. Instead, he grabbed his coat and left for work, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. That evening, Emily overheard a conversation between William and his mother. She had just finished tidying up the living room when their voices drifted in from the kitchen. "She's so plain," Grace was saying. "No ambition, no class. You could have done so much better, William." "She's comfortable," William replied, hesitantly and honestly. "She doesn't demand much. She's easy to handle." Emily's blood ran cold. Easy to handle, was that all she was to him? Emily spent the next few days putting her plan into action. She contacted Arthur Blake, her attorney and confidant, and outlined her intentions. Arthur had been with her since the early days of her business and knew her well enough to sense her frustration. "You're sure about this?" Arthur asked, his voice calm but serious. "Once you reveal the truth, there's no going back." "I'm sure," Emily replied, her voice firm. "I need to see their true colors, and I want to ensure they understand the consequences of their actions." Arthur nodded. "I'll handle everything. By the time we're done, they'll be at your mercy." The Donovan family gathered in the living room for another of their frequent dinners. Emily had been unusually quiet that evening, her calm demeanor betraying none of the storm brewing inside her. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, ensuring every detail was in place. Grace, as usual, dominated the conversation, criticizing everything from Emily's cooking to the cheap wine she had brought home. William sat on the couch, nodding occasionally, his focus divided between Grace's complaints and his phone. Claire and Darren lounged nearby, oblivious to Emily's steely gaze. Emily waited until the room fell into a comfortable lull before she stood and cleared her throat. "I have something to say," she began, her voice steady. Grace rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go. What now?" Ignoring her, Emily continued, "Over the past 2 years, I've tried to be a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, and a supportive part of this family. But I've realized that no matter how much I give, it's never enough for any of you." William frowned. "Emily, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the disrespect, the manipulation, and the complete lack of appreciation," Emily said, her voice growing firmer. "But most of all, I'm talking about trust, or rather, the lack of it." Grace crossed her arms, smirking. "Oh, please. If this is about me calling you plain, you'll have to grow a thicker skin, dear." Emily turned to her with a cold smile. "This isn't about what you said. It's about what I've done." Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a set of documents, placing them on the coffee table. "What's this?" William asked, leaning forward. "These," Emily said, her tone sharp, "are the deeds to this house and several other properties your family owns." William's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "We don't own." "You don't anymore," Emily interrupted. "I do." Over the past month, I purchased this house, Darren's gaming cafe location, and Claire's car, all through a holding company I control. The room fell silent. You're lying, Grace said, her voice shaky. You don't have that kind of money. Emily turned to her with a piercing gaze. Don't I? She reached into her bag again and pulled out a sleek tablet. With a few taps, she projected a series of financial statements onto the television screen. The Donovans stared in shock as Emily's name appeared under numerous high-value transactions and holdings. I am Emily Harper, she said, her voice ringing with authority, owner of Harper Enterprises, Billionaire, and the woman you've spent 2 years belittling and underestimating. William stumbled to his feet, his face pale. Emily, why didn't you tell me? Emily turned to him, her expression unreadable. Because I needed to know if you loved me for who I am, not for what I have. And now I have my answer. Emily, please, William began, his voice desperate. I didn't mean for things to get like this. You didn't mean to stand by while your family insulted me, Emily interrupted. You didn't mean to prioritize their wants over our marriage. Save your excuses, William. They don't matter anymore. She handed him a final document, the divorce papers. William's hands shook as he took them. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have, Emily replied, her tone firm. I deserve better than this, William. Better than you. The Donovans sat in stunned silence as Emily gathered her things and walked to the door. Turning back one last time, she said, you wanted to see what I was capable of. Now you have. With those words, Emily closed the door behind her, and a weight lifted from her shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was free, and she would never let anyone take her worth for granted again. 1 year later, Emily Harper stood on the deck of a luxurious yacht, cruising along the Mediterranean Sea. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting the waters in hues of gold and crimson. She closed her eyes, letting the cool breeze kiss her skin as she reflected on how much her life had changed since leaving the Donovans. In the months following the divorce, Emily had thrown herself into her work, expanding Harper Enterprises into new markets and philanthropic ventures. Her efforts not only doubled her wealth but also reignited her passion for making a difference. She established scholarships for underprivileged women and launched programs to mentor young entrepreneurs. Emily's personal life flourished as well. Surrounded by genuine friends who valued her for who she was, she had built a circle of trust and warmth. She even reconnected with an old college friend, Daniel Hayes, a fellow entrepreneur with a sharp mind and an infectious laugh. Though they were taking things slow, Daniel's unwavering respect and admiration reminded Emily of what a true partnership could be.